Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Between Tides podcast. My name is Tim, and we are so glad you could be with us today. Whether you're a certified fan or if this is your first time joining us, the goal of our podcast is actually pretty simple. We hope to educate, encourage, and inspire our audience to become just a little bit smarter, maybe a little bit more curious, maybe even a little bit healthier after listening to each episode. I'm joined today by my co host, Jared, and we could not be more excited than to talk with our very special guest today. He's not only one of the finest high school coaches in the state of Pennsylvania, but I would argue he is one of the best coaches at any level. He's got more than 350 wins in his career. He's a 10-time WPIL finalist and a 7-time champion, which is incredible. Just one of 4 coaches to do that. He's got a state title, undefeated state title team in 2014. But even more important, he relishes his role as a husband, father, and a community leader. And not only is he a fantastic coach, I think you will learn after this episode, he's an even better human being. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ralph Blundo of Newcastle High School as we explore the art and science of coaching. All right, so Ralph, this has been a long time coming. You and I have been talking about this for what, 10 years now to get together and do a long form conversation. So I know we can take this in 100 different directions. So why don't we just start with the big picture? How would you define the term coaching?
Well, I think, for me, Tim, I think coaching is, taking a kid or a group, meeting them where they're at, okay, and trying to find a way to move them day by day so that they can meet their potential in every aspect of their life. That's a clear answer for me. When you ask a question like that, like, when I think of each kid, like I try to meet them all exactly where they're at emotionally as players, their character, their toughness, their approach to what they're doing, their habits, and just try to move them every day, through that level of discomfort, until you get them to a place where, um, those habits are very natural. It allows them to be successful in different aspects of life, and that that when they leave you, it's in them now. And that's the tough part. I always say, at the end, a kid is either surface or soul. Sometimes you have a kid who did all those things because you really demanded it from them, and they just did it, but it really wasn't in their soul to do it. And then there are others who it's in them. You've gotten them to the point where it's who they become. And those kids, their track records when they leave you are is a high level of success. But yeah, that's how I would define it.
So when you see a player, you said like meet them where they're at. Like you have
Hmm.
to be able to see and evaluate what their potential is right now,
Hmm.
and then where their potential is in the future. Do you try to elevate all players to the same level of potential, or they all have kind of independent goals and it actually is personalized?
Yeah, it's personalized, but I mean, obviously, the ultimate goal is okay. How successful can you be when you leave? So, I mean, that standard has to be close to the same. I think some kids they have different potential, obviously, and different abilities, but you're evaluating everything about the kid, the personality, the way that they handle coaching, the way that they approach their craft, their habits in terms of punctuality, their habits in terms of effort, their body language habits, their team spirit, their effort, their how are they with discomfort and effort, and how much do they care about their teammates, other people, how selfless are they? I mean, there's so many things, and kids come to you flawed. That's the way it is. It's from my perspective as a coach, is how do we move them? How do we move them to that place that we think success happens?
That's good. So we hear all the time that great coaches are great leaders, right? Think of Nick Saban and Bill Belichick and some of the famous coaches out there. Do you think coaching is more about leadership or teaching?
Well, I think it's both. I think, from a leadership perspective, I mean, the ability of a coach to be able to touch a kid in a way that they're going to respond. And I've learned over the years that that's different and changes all the time based on the kid. Um, but so if you can lead and a kid trusts you and they see your work ethic and they know how much you care, they're going to absorb your teaching at a higher level. And if you're going through the motions, I mean, they'll smell you, they know it. Um, if your care isn't genuine, they'll smell you, and they know it. Um, but teaching is what you're doing. I mean, that is it's an everyday thing. You are just constantly correcting and teaching, correcting and teaching. Um, and I think for some coaches that becomes really laborious and tough. But that is the process. It's it takes a long, long time to change habits. It takes a long, long time to get kids to maybe understand what you're trying to do. But that's all you're doing every day is you're teaching, and that's what I did for a living for 10 years. As a teacher. So
Can you tell us more just about your past? Like, what is your background? When you said you've been teaching for 10 years, like,
yeah,
can you tell us more about that?
it was actually 7 years. I don't know why I
7
said
years.
maybe 8 years. It was 7 or 8 years,
Okay.
but I've been an assistant principal for 17 years, 18 years now. At the time when they hired me as an assistant principal, they didn't allow principals to coach any longer, and they hired Mark Stanley for 3 years. And I think one of the things that they noticed is, I guess, at Newcastle in particular, that it was really hard to be successful as a coach not being in that building
Mm.
every day. So, kind of the interesting dynamic there was that not only was being an assistant principal um, a great opportunity, but it's probably the catalyst to our success. Being an assistant principal in school and being the head basketball coach has allowed me to get ahead of issues, problems, uh, find out what things that kids are dealing with every single day. And that office becomes a place where you can sit there and you can talk to them. Teachers come to me if a kid isn't maybe quite meeting the standard in the classroom or misbehaving, or I can get ahead of a kid who's coming late to school, and creating bad habits that way. It's been the single most important part of our success, I think. And it's a 10-month position, which allows me to really focus on our team in the off season.
Yeah, it sounds like it's about a lot more than just basketball.
Well, significantly, yeah,
Yeah.
there's no question about that.
Right.
And Newcastle is different. I'm sure it's like that a lot of places, but it requires more.
Mhm.
So I watch a lot of basketball on TV and in person, and I look to the sideline. I see the coaches with this look of frustration and turnover, arguing with officials. Just you know how that works. What made you? I think in my mind, you chose to do this, or
Mhm.
you chose to, for that hour, to put yourself through that. What made
Mm.
you get into coaching?
So I graduated. I graduated from Westminster College. I had a communications degree, and I also had a history minor, and Coach Sarandra hired me right out of college to coach, and a seventh grade team. So I go in and we have our first practice, and I went home and I said, "Dad, this is what I'm supposed to be doing." He went, "Hey, you couldn't have figured that out before you went to college for 4 years." So I said, because I had a full scholarship, so it, and so he said, "Look," he goes, "if you want to go back, you have to pay for it." So I went back to school and um, got my secondary education degree. And because he
Oh,
said, he goes, "Do you want to coach college? You want to coach high school?" He says, "If you want to coach college, you have to understand that you could be uprooting your family, you could be moving all over the country, and that kind of wasn't the way I knew a family, and so I chose the high school route and went back. I got my certificate in secondary education history, and coached 1 year, seventh grade coach, another year ninth grade coach. Next thing you know, I was the head coach at George Junior Republic, and I had no idea what I was doing, Tim. And I mean, literally. Uh, but it just kind of got the ball rolling for me, and I don't know. I think I'm definitely one of those people who has done what he was meant to do at the place he was meant to do it.
Mm,
okay.
that's
Can you go
fantastic.
yeah, can you go back to that first experience with the 7th graders, I
Mhm.
believe you said? Was there any, like, overarching lesson you were like, "Yep, that got things going"?
It just felt right.
Uh-huh.
That's the only way I could say it. It just felt right. I just felt like I was so comfortable in what I was doing. I never coached a day in my life at that point. I've only played.
Okay.
It just felt right. And I think that as those juices started flowing, and I was fortunate to have a father I can bounce those things off of, and he said, "Hey, life doesn't have to start right now." Because I was just growing up because I was married at 21, 22. We were dodging the war, trying to get the deferments. It's just going to college is just to avoid things. And he said, "For you," he said, "you can start life when you're ready." He says, "Go back to school. There's nothing wrong. More education. There's nothing wrong with that." And that encouraged me, and went back, and the rest is history.
Okay. Was your dad a coach as well?
No, no,
No?
my
Okay.
father was, no, he was just a guy who worked, you know what I mean? Raised his family, but he's a wise man. Like, he always, would think things through, never spoke without thinking through it, and, although tough on us and, very no nonsense in terms of excuses or anything like that, he always was the type that, was, would give you a level of wisdom that was, valuable. You can lean on him. Mhm.
So you were fresh out of college. How did you learn how to coach?
Well, I think I learned how to coach from, well, one, I played for Coach Ross, and then I went off to Monmouth and played for a guy named Wayne Zook, who was a Pete Carrill disciple, um, and then left Monmouth and went to Westminster and played for Coach Galbraith, and then watching Coach Saranger bring in a whole new system at Newcastle over a 6 or 7 year period. You just kind of try to touch the hands of a bunch of people, and what ends up happening is you create your own philosophy based on what you see and you like and what you don't like, and there was so much good in all those guys, but they weren't perfect like me, as a coach. So that, if you put it all together, Coach Saranger was extremely passionate. Coach Galbraith was extremely proper. Um, Coach, Saranger, press all over the floor and everything was fast paced, and Coach Galbraith was really methodical in his approach and pragmatic in the things that he did, and you just can learn so much from that. And then again, you're learning the Princeton offense at Monmouth, and some of the things that I learned from Coach Ross and Jimmy Payne, and over the years, and then all of a sudden you're watching everybody. You're watching George Abraham and Al Campman and John Miller and Tim McConnell, and now you're trying to just kind of put this thing together. And then I think if you do that and you maintain who you are as a person and your leadership style, um, you can create quite a philosophy. When I got my first job, Coach Galbraith called me up and he said to me, "I have one bit of advice for you." He said, "You can't be Ron Galbraith, you can't be John Sarand, you can't be Coach Ross. You got to be yourself." And I've given every young coach that same advice as they've moved on into that profession.
That's good. So what have you had to unlearn throughout your coaching career?
Well, I was such a hard line early on. I was trying to create a culture, and it was really important. And I mean, it was so no nonsense and so no room for um, effort, errors, team spirit, errors. There was just no wiggle room there. When I got the job, I said that we were going to play harder than everybody else. We were going to be great teammates. Our kids were going to know the system, and they were going to conduct themselves the right way in the classroom and in school and in the community. And over time, um, our community has changed so much that um, you have to give a level of grace and understand circumstances more. I think if you just throw a blanket over every kid and say, "All right, this is what it is. You don't want me to stand in Newcastle, hit the road, kid." Well, there's a lot of things that they're trying to unlearn. Maybe what they've observed their entire life, and you're teaching them something completely different. And so that process is going to take some time. So you have to give them the grace that they need, consequence where they need them, talk where they need it, um, and then kind of find your way to um, getting them where you want. But I mean, there are probably guys that have played for me in the last few years that wouldn't have made it 2 weeks, 15 years ago. You know, but it's a different time. Again, the culture also has been set, and I don't have to create any more. It's there, but I'm more compassionate toward their plight.
When you say they wouldn't make it 2 weeks, do you think they would have quit or they would have been
One
dismissed?
or the other.
One or the other.
The
Okay.
one, it would have been so hard that they probably wouldn't have come back, or two, um, you know, you know, being a great teammate was paramount. But kids are emotional today. They go through more than they did. They're dealing with social media and outside influences and all kinds of things that affect their mental health. So, um, you have to be cognizant of all that, and a little bit more understanding, and you can still get them where you want, you know. But back then, it was simply, it was almost a threat of, look, you don't do it this way, you're not going to be here. So it's that simple, you know. So yeah, those are things that I've had. I had to move. These are, these are the COVID kids. I've had to move myself in a different direction and understand that, you be careful taking away opportunities from kids, because they're trying to unlearn some things as well. Mhm.
So, how would you? We're going to have a lot of coaches listening to this, I'm sure. How would you describe your coaching style, both strategically and relationally?
Well, I think the relationship part's the most important part. I mean, there is no, what you're asking kids to do is really, really, really hard. You're asking them to be disciplined in every aspect of their life. You're asking them and demanding that they're at school on time when other kids don't do it, or that they behave a certain way in school, and that they conduct themselves a certain way, and and then the workouts are extremely difficult, and the conditioning is extremely difficult, and if they don't have a relationship with you and understand that, what you're trying to accomplish with them, together with them, they're simply not going to do it because it's too hard. So, you create the relationship with the kids, and they understand you, and you understand them, and they see it over a period of time. And then, as far as, philosophically, in terms of strategy, we're a team that wants to play fast. We're a team that wants to play harder than everybody else. We want to be extremely disciplined and shoot it well, and we work hard on those things. We're a team that tries to develop skill in the off season, but we're also a team that has played a lot of different ways. We haven't always pressed all over the floor, and we haven't always, just been a half court man team, or we've done. There's things that we did not do this year that we've been doing for 14 years. Um, so I think obviously the personnel dictates a lot of that. And we've run hundreds of different sets. One thing we aren't is a positionless offense. We've always been, a position type offense. So if you're a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and if I could change something about myself as a coach, that's probably it. Um, but that requires a great understanding that I haven't been able to kind of grab onto yet enough to be able to teach it to our kids. So, those are things that we try to grow. We try to work on some things. The offenses have changed over the years: slip screens, ghost screens, from motions to dribble drives. I mean, we've evolved with it. We still do some things, that we started with, but our strategy changes, yearly based on, our person. We're always going to game plan hard, really hard, to give our kids the biggest advantage that they could have going onto the floor. And I've had great assistants. And Billy Humphrey, Jason Donalock, Bobby Natel, David Richards, Deshaun Gordon, John Cox. And I mean, I've had great guys who are high character guys that care about kids, and they're going to work hard for Newcastle basketball. So I've been blessed, for sure.
So, how about you personally? How do you continue to evolve as a coach? Are you a big reader, podcast listener? Is a Nike clinic still a thing? Do you still go to
Yeah,
clinics?
yeah. I mean, and I go to clinics. I don't go to them a lot because um, I don't think they're really sharing the way they say. They don't. I mean, and you think about the whole concept of a clinic. That, okay, let's have a coach. Let's go to a clinic, and let's go tell all the other coaches all our secrets. I think they're half sharing, and there's a and the details are what matter, and there's a detail they're leaving out somewhere in there that's going to allow whatever they're teaching to be really successful. But, it's now it's podcast and social media. I mean, it's right there in front of you. You know what I mean? And you have to be careful because, you can overload your mind and thoughts. I mean, I have sticky notes of plays I see on social media, and that I text to myself. I mean, hundreds of them, and it's too much, and the next thing you know,
They all
either
work on social media.
yeah, they all work. But one of the things I learned, right away is that, anything coming from college probably isn't gonna work in high school because they guard different
Mhm.
in college, and same thing with the NBA. You get something from a college coach, you look at, "Man, that looks beautiful," but, teams don't guard that way in high school, so you kinda have to sift through those things, but a lot of it is philosophical stuff. I'm on Sean Miller's stuff right now, his podcast and his reality show. I'm just love listening to him, his intensity and passion for what he's doing, and he just is constantly pressing and pressing and pushing that envelope with those kids. And um, I mean, the challenge that he has in that Big East, man, wow, so yeah, I mean, I'm on him pretty good right now. I was listening to JJ Redick before he got the job a little bit, and um, you know. Love the guy from Texas A&M. I can't remember his name.
Buzz Williams.
Buzz Williams, yeah, he almost stresses me out. He works so hard. You know what I mean? He's he's off the charts, and his teams succeed. And then watching like a lot of the whole the St. John stuff, and it's nostalgic for me because I remember the early Big East and watching him come back and have the success that he has, and he's got to be one of the greatest coaches of all time. It doesn't matter where he goes. He just outworks everybody.
I'd like to go back for a second to Tim's unlearning question.
Mm,
What about with your players? Like, when they come to you, do you feel
mm.
like they're trying to emulate what they see in the NBA or at the college level, or do they have a clear vision and goal of what you want from them as a player?
No, they don't have a no, because their ultimate influence in their life, what they see the most is whatever they see on media.
Mm.
And that's kind of like the we're trying to combat that in every aspect of their life. That is their ultimate influence.
Really?
They are influenced by what they see on their phones, because it's more than what they're getting at home. And even you as a coach or whatever mentor it is, that is overwhelming everything. So you have to be as overwhelming as you can possibly be and let them know that what you see is not how it works.
Yes.
You know, and so yeah, understanding how to play basketball and play basketball the right way has become more difficult because winning basketball games is now for a lot of kids way less important than going out there and not getting embarrassed. Because if somehow on the court you get crossed up or you fall down and you end up on social media like
Mm,
it's the ultimate humiliation, you got 100 people retweeting it or sharing it and liking it, and next thing you know, you're the brunt of everyone's laughs. And you try to minimize that like it's not important, but I think as a kid it probably is. So now when I say that's why I say when they're dealing with way more than we dealt with. Um, so here you are trying to win basketball games, and these are all the things that you're concerned with today that you weren't concerned with a long time ago.
wow.
Mhm.
So, from the coaching aspect, aside from winning games, tell us what makes a great coach, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, aside from winning games, it's obviously what are they doing 5, 10 years after they leave you. That's We had a 10-year reunion for the 2014 team at my house this summer, and I cried all night. I mean, it was just the, I got the four players on that team have master's degrees. Jake McFadder has a master's degree, Anthony Richards, Drew Allen, Stu Allen, all have master's degrees, and then the fifth guy's worth 50 million. So he didn't need one. Um,
For those who
mm,
don't know, that's Malik Hooker of
yeah,
the Dallas Cowboys, right?
right. And so the level of success and their understanding of things when you listen to them talk now, it obviously they had great parents too. I mean, we didn't do that unilaterally. I mean, they had really good parents that cared about them, but and high character kids. But um, just hearing them talk and seeing where they're at and they're starting families and all that stuff and understanding how important it is to be a good father and all those things. That's how hey man, we did something right. Outside of the wins.
Sure.
But I'd say that's it.
As a coach of all the players, what do you want to see the most from parents?
Get out of the way.
Oh,
Just trust me.
Okay.
Just, just stay out of the way and trust me that we are doing everything that we're doing is in the best interest of that kid. And that's not always easy. Some parents have a level of mistrust because of some trauma growing up or whatever. There's a lot of reasons for it. Um, but that's the thing that you really try to get is if you just trust me, we can do this. Um, if when you're given the opportunity, you row in that same direction with us. I tell parents all the time, if you want to stunt the growth of your kids' uh, process, talk negative about a player, talk negative in front of them about a coach, um, uh, talk negative about the team. And then your kid will subconsciously give a little less because now they have a built-in excuse.
Yeah.
Well, I know. So you're allowed to have feelings as a parent, and you're human. Talk to each other about it, but don't talk to it in front. Don't talk about it in front of. If my dad didn't like any of my coaches, I never knew it. I would never have known it. Um, and I'm sure he's human. I'm sure there were things he was disagreeable to, but he would never talk about it in front of me. So yeah, I think that that's really important. And I tell parents, if you love your kid, do that. If you don't want them to grow, talk negatively about a process in front of him. I said, the kid's there now. He's playing. Support that process 100%.
Great,
You know.
great advice.
hmm
So, speaking to that culture, then, how would you describe your program's culture? What is Newcastle basketball?
Different. And that is probably the thing that we talk to our kids about most. We talk about that whole social media thing. Like, we are going to be different. We're not focused on um, anything other than our process. We're not goal oriented. We don't talk about goals. We don't talk about winning championships. We talk about being where our feet are and being great at what we're doing at that moment, whether it's films, whether it's skill work, whether it's practice, whatever it is. But we're disagreeable to the existing movement. You're not going to see us go through through starting lineup line, and you're not going to pat us down. We're not going to do a wiggle and a dance, and we talk about that all the time. Well, they're dancing over there. We're getting ready to kick their tails in. Um, you're not going to see us address referees after a call. We're going to run on and off the floor. We're going to wear uniforms. We're going to wear same socks, same shoes, because that's why they call it a uniform. And this is an age where it's moving away from that. But we believe in team. You want to be an individual, go golf, play tennis. You know what I mean? But this is a
Right.
team. Um, so while the rest of the world is moving that way, and we talk about Romans chapter 12, don't conform to the ways of the world. Like, we're going to be different. We're not changing what everybody else is, because I'm not real, as a coach and a leader and as a father, I'm not all that excited about the way the world is moving.
Yeah.
So we're not going to run with it. And we're going to stick to our principles. We're going to try to outwork everybody. And we're going to do what we think, do things what we believe is the right way.
So, you mentioned the word principles there. I'd love to get your perspective on this. A few years back, I think it was over 500 college coaches were surveyed, and they were asked this question: what's most important to you? So when you survey 500 coaches, as you might expect, you're going to get a ton of different answers. But these five answers came from every single coach who was surveyed. They said faith is important, family, health, strong character, and relationships. Then they were asked another question: how do you think society measures your success? And here were there are the five most common responses that they shared. And I think you can guess these: wins and losses,
Mm,
championships,
mm,
rankings,
mm,
players moving on to the pros, and recruiting classes.
mm.
So, hearing that, how do you reconcile your why, your principles with society's scorecard?
Well, I think winning early, and when I became a coach, winning early mattered. We had a few tough years, and I think that that's kind of what started it. But they also, I think that those principles that we talked about in that philosophy and our culture was screaming. I think people saw it loud and clear, that they're I think you even wrote a story about it, for young kids, if you wanna see what right looks like, go to a Newcastle basketball game. And, um, even though I know our town was changing, man, they gravitated to it. It's almost like that they fell in love with that too. Like, it's hard to ignore good. It's hard to
Right.
ignore what is clearly right. Um, and and I even think, we used to have some really raucous fans, you know what I mean? But I even think that our demeanor and the way we conducted themselves, I think that the fans followed suit. You know what I mean? I think you saw fans who would come to our games and be excitable and whatnot, but not yelling and screaming at officials and overdoing it. Just knowledgeable fans who love basketball. So yeah, I think that yeah, you're always measured by wins and losses. That's not going to change. That's the simple way to look at things. But I think that our community has also fallen in love with the type of kids that are representing them really well. Like I think they're proud to go out and say, "Hey, I'm from Newcastle. Yeah, we get about all your kids play really hard." I like hearing that they conduct themselves right. They don't say anything to referees, um, and I think they're proud of that. I really do. Hmm.
So how did you build that? I mean, let's go nuts and bolts a little bit with the playing hard. I think whenever I watch one of your teams play, I think of Jay Billis's book, Toughness.
Hmm.
Right? Toughness is not getting in somebody's face, not
Mm-mm.
talking smack. It's what you do. It's picking up your teammates.
Mm.
It's moving on to the next play. If the ref calls it a foul, it's a foul. You move on, right? So how did you build that? Did you start with the feeder system first? Did it start with your high school kids? How did you when you first got in there? How did that work?
So it started with my high school kids first. So keep in mind when I got there, Malik Hooker is a freshman, Anthony Richards is a freshman, Sean Anderson is a sophomore, Brandon Dominick's a sophomore, Antonio Rudolph is a sophomore, um, Corey Eggleston is a junior. Um, these guys were ripe. I mean, it wasn't like you had to go in there and change a culture. You had to create a culture, which is easier than changing one. So those guys were there, wanted to be great, great character kids. So we established everything with them first. And, it was real simple. Early on in the career, like if you didn't do certain things, you sat down. That was it. Like that was, I didn't berate you. Is that if you didn't conduct yourself, if you shrugged your shoulders at a referee, you were coming to sit down, and they knew it. Um, so or if your body language was bad, you sat down. And what kids want to do is they want to play. And so that's kind of how we established that. And then, like I said, it was there for kids to see. And I actually didn't take over the elementary program until my third year. It was still at that time separate from the basketball program. And then once we got with the elementary, then it was the same thing. You're not going to wear arm sleeves. We're not going to wear leg sleeves. We're going to be uniform in what we did. And no, that first group went on to win 3 championships, after that, so, yeah, it was we needed to get it out there for people to see first, and it was obvious. It was obvious who we were.
Was there ever much pushback on they wanted to be their own person and, wear the sleeve and all that, or
Not really. It's funny, I had one of my players, I won't mention his name, in the WPL championship game. He was sitting on the floor, stretching out, putting on a leg sleeve, and I just looked at him and said, "You must not wanna play tonight." And I kept walking. And I looked at one of my assistants, I says, "Make sure that's not on his leg when he goes out there." And some people may not think that that's a big deal, but our thing was there's a lot of coaches who are major on the majors, and we were a major on the minors thing. We think
Mhm.
that if we can get you to do the smallest detail the right way, that you will set that screen the exact right way, you will cut the exact right way, you will yell the play out with that much more, volume, whatever it might be. Your eyes will be wider, your stance will be lower, your box out will be more precise and with more purpose. So that's why all the details, like when the kids get there, we want them at that moment thinking about, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? I just got dressed for practice. I'm supposed to tuck my shirt in. My shoes are supposed to be tied before I leave the locker room. By the time I come out on the floor and in between those lines, I run to my hoop and we begin shooting free throws. So, you know, those are things that condition their mind to, okay, there's something I'm supposed to be doing and I have to do it at a high level. Like, we don't ever shoot around. Like, kids have never come in the gym and just shot around. It's a waste of time. They go to the hoops and they begin shooting their free throws because there's purpose there.
Mhm.
Because we're trying to get that ingrained in their head. Let's be purposeful in what we're doing.
Nice.
Mhm.
I like that.
So, without giving away any secrets, walk us through a practice. Are you very time oriented? You have it down to the minute?
No. We are very schedule oriented, but what we're doing could take longer. The only thing that's on the clock is your water break. So, if when we come into practice and we go through our warm ups or stretch and then through our warm ups and whatever it is that we're doing next, um, it's on the schedule that way. But if it's not right, it's on the schedule longer. So that I mean, some
Right.
coaches are like, we just move, you move on, and I have a hard time with that. Like, how do you move on to what's next when what you just did wasn't correct?
Right.
So, um, and then we get into our breakdown stuff and our drills, and then when they go to get a drink, it's 2 minutes on the clock. They know it. They're on the line. As soon as that horn hits, they're on the line, so we can get back to what's next. But everything is regimented in what we do, um, because you know like I said, it just gets them thinking about what I have to do, and I have to do it right. So when we get into we do our defense always first, and actually there's an unlearn this year. I changed that and did offense first this year, just because halfway through the year I didn't feel like our flow was good in practice, and then I didn't think we were very connected offensively. And I said, well, let me get them focusing on this first. The other thing I learned is kids can't go very long these days. It cannot.
Yeah.
It becomes counterproductive. So you got to try to get things done in 2 hours, and then they start losing their focus. So, um, and then we always end with shooting, and then films are last. You know. But that's basically what practice looks like.
All right. So, you're married,
Mhm.
4 kids,
Yep.
demanding job as an assistant principal.
Mhm.
Can you take us through your daily schedule at this time of year?
Well, my wife gets up first. She gets up first, gets things going, gets me up. We we drive to work together now because see we have one less car than our family needs, and so the way it works in 2025 is the dad ends up without like I try and imagine that, like my dad not having a car, but I'm the guy. I drive to work with my wife, um, um, and because she works at the high school too, and then you work all day, and as an assistant principal, my job is essentially community relations and dealing with the students and teachers, but mostly discipline throughout the course of the day. So there's some days, and if you're not careful, you can bring that into the gym. We practice late. Coach Humphrey is an engineer. He works at, so it's better for him to practice late, and we practice better late. So we practice at 5:30 every day. So after work, I spend some time on some film, get our practice plan together, go into the gym at 5:15. Kids are at the free throw line at 5:15. Practice for this time of the year, it's an hour and a half. If you can get an hour and 20, it's good. It's another thing I didn't do when I was young. We practice way too long this time of the year, and kids were their legs were not there.
Yeah.
Um, and then we go in, watch film, eat something terrible for myself after practice because it's late. Go home and try to see the kids and talk to them about their day, and it ends up that your wife is last almost. You know what I mean? She's the last person you talk to before bed, and get up and do it again. And they're long days. There's no doubt they're very long days.
So, how do you and Katie then balance that with the needs of your family and the needs of your team? Is it
And she's a rock star. I mean, she does it. She does it. I'm not. I'm not a good balance guy. Worked on it my whole life. I'm just not. Um, So she handles it. Anything that's tough with she's taking care of it. She's handled. She's getting the kids where they have to go. She's making sure everyone's fed. She's making sure lunches are made. I mean, she's making sure um, she's making sure the garbage is out sometimes. You know what I mean? Like she's a rock star. That's just what she does, and she's doing all that while taking care of her mom, um, who lives in Pittsburgh. Um, she's she's got an incredible will, to make sure stuff gets done. She's one of those. I mean, so I just see no chance I could do this without her. None. I'm blessed that way for sure.
So being an assistant principal and a coach, do you feel like basketball was always rolling in the back of your mind, or do you compartmentalize and you're in like an administrator mode, and then you switch over to coach?
I'm not great at it. I want to be better at it. So, like I said, I want to be able to compartmentalize. I really admire the coaches. Bob Kirkwood is great at that. Coach at Nishanik. Mark Stanley's good at that. There's some guys I know in coaching that I mean, they're fine all the time. I mean, their minds are clear. They're not working, not thinking about it, except when they're in practice. Um, but no, I'm an all day guy. Usually, I'm thinking about it a lot. I'm still doing my job, but
Sure.
um, uh, it's always in the back of my mind, a thought, and you're writing something down, a note or whatever. And so, yeah, if I could change something about myself, that would be first on the list. Somebody who can compartmentalize things a little bit better. Yeah, that's why my wife's so important because when I come home, I'm still thinking about a bunch of different things, and there is moments where I have time to do more for the family, but she's taking care of it because she knows my mind is somewhere else.
So, speaking of family, you've had the privilege of coaching your son Ralphie throughout
Mhm.
his high school career. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And um, it's one of those things where he was 3 years old when I got the job, um, and there from the jump, admired some really high character workers and players. I mean, I remember the first practice ever, he was leaning on my leg and I blew the whistle and the guys come running over. And I said, he's going to be here a lot. And I want to like what he sees. I want to like what he hears.
Mm,
And
that's good.
those guys were just awesome with him. He always had older friends kind of because of it. It was kind of like a strange dynamic. And so, someday he's on your team and it's an amazing thing. The we've had a great process together. I've always told him, I said, you get to have your dad as your coach, and there's going to be some tough moments, but you don't get to have him telling everyone how great you are or how good you are, or that's not something you're going to hear from me. That's for somebody else to do. Um, And I think that's the trade-off there. I don't think there's a lot of value of a father saying how good their son is in anything. I was just thinking, if someone else wants to blow that horn, they can. But I told him that it's not going to be me. So, he doesn't get a lot of attention that way, and he's never cared about it because he's so ingrained into the principles of team and Newcastle basketball. That's what he grew up with. That's what he understands. He can see when a kid doesn't have the right mindset. He smells it from a mile away. And what's been tough is that, I've hung silver on his neck 4 times in 4 years, 3 in Whitfields, 1 in Hershey. And he said to me, the other day we were driving home, he says, "Dad, I just don't know why, of all the success, why my mine was different." And I says, The only thing that was different was your outcome, but your process was the same. You got everything everybody else got. You learned all the same things everybody else learned." I said, "You just didn't have that moment." I says, "But there's a lot of kids who have 0 silvers. I've never played at the Pete. I've never played at Hershey. You got to do a lot. You got to see a lot, and you got to learn a lot. And now that we're here, you're a good basketball player and a really, really good young man, and you're ready for what's next. That's the part that matters. This is such a small piece of your life. You got 60 years left, 70 years, God willing. He's ready for it. But it's been good. It was never really contentious. He gets me. Well, my hard coaching on him bothered him none. I mean, not at all. You just dismiss it and move on to whatever he's doing next. And sometimes he was obviously the brunt of it because I knew, we do that as coaches. So that's probably one of the worst things coaches do is that you You lay into somebody just because it makes you feel better for a moment. You talk about things you want to change about yourself. So you lay into somebody, and it's not going to be effective. It's not what's good for the process, but you feel better after doing it or saying it. And you know, he received most of those, but he didn't care. It didn't ever bother him. And so yeah, it's been a great process. And now that it's close to the end, it's a strange feeling for sure.
Mm.
Strange feeling. I don't know how I feel about it, but I feel different.
Anything you would do differently?
No, there's nothing. I really prayed about that process, and I wanted to make sure I handled it right. Now, of course, my wife would say there's some things you could have been better at, and I'm sure I'm not perfect, but it was something that I gave a whole lot of thought to before he came up because it's a high profile program. He's the same name as me. Um, and I think what I'm most proud about with him is that, most coaches' sons are perceived in a way as privileged or coddled or
Mhm.
get opportunities they don't deserve. And he is, you know, he is adored by his community. And I've been able to kind of sit back and watch that. And I think they love him because of his care for what he's doing, his grit, um, his respectfulness and kindness to people that's authentic, um, good in the way he is with young kids who maybe look up to him. They admire him for all the right reasons. He's a good player. He's not a great player. He's a good player. Um, they admire him for the right reasons in a situation where it would be easy to not like him just because of who he is. And I don't think that was easy to do, but he did it naturally. So I'm proud of him for that.
So you mentioned with Ralphie, you used the term coaching hard. In 2025, some people might be taken aback by that word. What does that mean, coaching hard?
Well, I think it's about the demand. Um, as you grow as a coach, you're careful. Dar Huey, who is a defense was a defense 7-time national champion coach up at Westminster. He always talked about being demanding without being demeaning, and I have some people in my life because I can wiggle. You know what I mean? Like I can be hard, and I have people in my life that temper me the right way and keep me um, in that right direction. So I've learned, like, I have a player right now that that struggles with composure, or would struggle with toughness, struggle with some things, and, man, I used to those are things that were unacceptable to me because 'cause they're controllable. And those are kind of our non-negotiables, controllable things, and I learned that, if my ultimate goal is to get him to a certain point, then, my response to his maybe lack of toughness or lack of composure needs to change. So how do I get him back when he's losing his composure again? The ultimate goal at that point needs to be how do you get him back to a place in his mind and in his head where he can then be effective. So that's a unlearn. That's something that I've changed over the years and learned that uh, the goal is effectiveness. The goal is to grow the kid. The process has to be different based on the kid, their personality, their mindset, how they handle things. Um,
I'm just curious. So when a player is starting to check out, just losing it,
mhm.
is it kind of put them in timeout and let them configure, or is it just that is unacceptable? It needs to turn off, and then let's
It,
get back in.
like I said, it used to be, you take them out of the game and then you lay into them a little bit. And now it's, you take them out of the game, you let them walk right past you, let them go sit on the bench, coach another 30 seconds and turn around, squat and say, that's enough. All right. We need you here. Get yourself together. And then you take a look and you look at them and say, you good? And you put them back in. So, like I said, there's a lot of reasons why kids lose their composure today. They're dealing, the social emotional aspect of their life is different and it's on overload.
Sure.
So they can get to that point quicker than they used to be able to.
Mhm.
So you just got to be aware of it and understand what they're dealing with and try to help bring them back. And then what you find out is that kids start knowing themselves. And that's when it's easier to give them that grace because they know themselves and they're working on it and they're getting better. And, you know, it's a process for sure.
So, in terms of composure and whatnot, do you do any mental fitness training?
No, but I think that's there are there are school people doing that now. For 3 years, we did social emotional learning classes um, once a week. Sean Anderson Senior used to do it. Brian Rice used to do it for us, and it's just a different person, talking about self talk and talking about. But we didn't do it this year. Was my point. We started it during COVID. We thought it was the right time to do it, and I think it's helped our kids, and it's probably something that we need to continue. Newcastle kids are under a lot of pressure. I mean, they are the face of the town. The kids that are playing basketball for us, it's like they're responsible for bringing a level of joy to our community over the winter that kids maybe shouldn't be responsible for. And I don't know if they feel it exactly like that. I feel it like that as a coach. Well, I'm 52. You know, um, I can handle that, but if they feel it like that, that's a big responsibility. Um, and our community is capable of being critical. They
A lot
know
of
it.
weight to put on a high schooler,
Yeah, it's a
right?
lot,
Sure.
and you know, and I think the past success weighs on our kids. They want to make sure that they hold up their end as they come through here. So
Do you think that helps or hurts you?
yeah, it's probably a little bit
Or
of
both?
both. Yeah, I think it
Sure.
definitely helps. The expectations always help, and then when you're in big moments, they expect to be successful because we've been here. We expect to be here. Like when we were at the Pete this last week, we said we're going home. We've been here 10 times in 15 years. We're going where we belong. And we belong here. And that helps to rise to the occasion. No, we didn't play well, didn't play great, but I think it was just more Upper St. Clair than it was the moment. You know.
You've had tons of success. Is there a coaching mistake or a loss that just has stayed with you through the years?
Yeah. Yeah. 2016, we're 24-1, 23-1. Really good team. 2 years removed from the state championship. Markel Hooker, Marcus Hooker, Geno Stone, Pat Minonock, Micah Felina. And we're playing Highlands, a really good team. Semifinal game. We're the 1 seed. Actually won 21 in a row before losing to that great Alder team on the last day of the season. And there's 20 seconds left to go in the game. And frankly, I would say that to some degree, I was an inexperienced late game coach in tight situations. And we had just been beating teams for years so bad. And Garrett Farr is at the free throw line. He's a junior. He's shooting 2 free throws. And I have 4 timeouts left. The opposing coach has 0. So I make a decision not to call timeout after he makes the second free throw to go up 3 to set up our defense. And so I'm telling everybody, body on a body, late game situation, no threes, except the guy shooting the free throw. And he helps just a bit. And they make a 3 and goes in overtime. We lose. And what I know is that it's coaching 101. He hits and makes that second free throw, you call timeout. You either call timeout, send someone to the scores table, whatever, but you communicate your idea, you get a stoppage and play. And so I felt like I took a championship away from that group. And every time I see them, I remind them that, I lost that one for you. That one stings because that was a really, really good team. And Beaver Falls goes on to beat Highlands, and then we beat Highlands. We beat Beaver Falls in the second round of the state playoffs for the third time that year. So it was I don't want to say a foregone conclusion that we would win, but when we played them, we did all 3 times. So yeah, that one hurts because they didn't get that moment, and they did enough to win that game, but their coach got to call timeout.
So I remember can't forget the 2014 state championship team. Your theme that year was together.
Hmm.
Do you have a theme each year for your
No,
team?
it's always been together.
Hmm.
Every time we break the huddle, captain or whoever it is will say, "How are we gonna do it?" And everyone responds together. Um, and, we wanted to we really, Tim, we wanted to transform an entire community with that. We wanted that thing to permeate throughout, everywhere. And it had a lot of steam for a while, and then it fizzles, for various reasons. But in terms of our group, I mean, that's always what it's going to be. And that's who we are. And, you know, um, and I think that helps kids understand, how you count on one another and care about each other. I think it's a big thing with kids today is to get them to look past themselves just a little bit, and understand if you care about other people, a lot of good things are going to happen for you. You know,
So Billy Graham had a famous quote where he said that a coach will impact more lives in 1 year than the average person will in a lifetime. How do you feel about that statement?
I think the ability to deeply impact somebody in that gym, is beyond anything else, because coaching when you were in that gym and it's just you and those 18 kids, from a leadership perspective, um, there is nothing more intimate in terms of really, really trying to impact a kid. It's different than the classroom. It's different than 70 kids on a football field outside. It's just different. And when you're in that gym, to some degree, all bets are off. You can do the things, if your heart is clear and your purpose and what you're trying to accomplish is right and everything's coming from a good place, it gives you the opportunity to coach in a way where you can't probably do it anywhere else. And so, yeah, I think that those four walls are a special place, um, to impact kids, especially when they all know what the standard is and what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, you can move kids. It's a challenge. It gets harder every year, but you can move kids, and it's extremely gratifying when you do. Um, I always love the end of the process when the seniors speak at a banquet and talk about that process, and and they talk about where they were. They see it now, where they were and then where they are now, and probably how much they disliked me at times during that process, but they understand what we were trying to do, you know. So yeah, it's an intimate place, no question.
So, in observance of March Madness, let me throw some lightning round at you. Just a couple of names from the present and the past, and just give me your thoughts on them. So, Mike Krzyzewski.
The goat,
Mm.
um, at least on the exterior, the guy did it the right way, you know, um, and seemed to be doing it the right way when a lot of colleges were doing it the wrong way. At least what we felt like it's the wrong way. I mean, his books were a big part of my philosophy. You talked about that. I've read, the Five Fists, and his philosophy on next play and kind of the way he led his team. But he seemed to lead with character. I know he coaches kids hard, but he seemed to coach with character, and you know, a bunch of championships, and his guys were successful. Mm.
Favorite story of mine. I met him at a few coaching clinics up in Cleveland. I remember going up to talk to him. And he looked at my name tag.
Mm.
He's like, "What the heck kind of name is that?"
Yeah, that is funny. Yeah, yeah.
You're just like, it's Tim.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah. Jay Wright.
Probably my favorite.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm a lifetime Villanova fan. My father introduced me to Villanova in '82 when John Pannone and Stu Granger were there, and in '85 when they did the impossible. You have Italian Catholic head basketball coach who my mom just wanted to invite to our house and eat dinner.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, I can remember going outside and shooting in the driveway at like midnight because the game started at like 9:30. after they won the national championship. So I was a Villanova fan and still a Villanova fan for life. But Jay Wright did it with so much class and just just loved his disposition. And and he got out because he just couldn't he just couldn't live with the way and that college basketball was moving. It wasn't for him, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Tons of respect for him. Great coach. Read his book. Um, yeah, I'd say he's my favorite.
Mm. You mentioned Sean Miller before.
Mm,
How about Sean?
love Sean. Obviously, as a kid, obviously watching Sean as a player and coming to Coach Ross's camps and showing us. I mean, that's my development came from what he was teaching, the king ball handling drills and the stuff he was doing on Johnny Carson. And
Yeah.
Sean hired one of my former players, Anthony Richards, out at Arizona, got him started, and appreciate that. Um, but I mean, there's a lot of just coaches. There's coaches in this area, Tim, that I just admire beyond. Like I think Andy Toole's one of the best coaches in the country. Been to a bunch of his practices down at Rob Morris. What he's doing down there is special. Joe Lombardi at IUP, just a faith-based approach to what he does. Really connects with his kids. And young David Richards down at Chatham, what he's done there is incredible. So I'm learning from a lot of really good guys right here in this area. It helped me grow as a coach year in and year out.
How about one more, Danny Hurley?
I wouldn't say that I align with his philosophy, but he has an intensity about him that is, and a will that is, I mean, obviously off the charts. He obviously has an arrogance about him, but that is different than But Danny's Danny. Little known fact is that Danny was in the Round Ball Classic in '91 when I played there.
Hmm.
And it's kind of how I got my scholarship is that we played I was in the first game. We played um, the big teams in a scrimmage each day. So we played the West team one day and the East team another day. And I put it to Danny Hurley a little bit. He was really disinterested. I don't think he really wanted to be there, to be honest with you. I don't think he cared about, playing against Ralph Blundo, but I actually played really well. And next thing you know, I end up with the division. It's the only offer I got. But
Nice.
yeah, but so I met him all the way back then. But he's a hard worker, man, and obviously a great coach.
So, Ralph, we want to be respectful of your time. We really appreciate you coming on today, and we'll
Sure.
get you out of here with just a couple more. And we've all seen a big shift in the coaching profession, maybe over the last 20 years or so. Can you envision where it's going, maybe in the next 20 years?
Well, I think it depends on what level. Um, I don't think you're going to see 25, 30-year guys anymore. I don't know that people can emotionally withstand it. Um, Obviously, college is changing completely. I've had college coaches tell me, like, where we're at today. I think to myself, this is not what I signed up for. I'm not a general manager. You start, when you're paying players, and I think players deserve to get paid because of the amount of money that it generates. But it's created a shift that where the power sits in the player, and it's really hard to lead a team. And I think what the other thing that you're going to not see any longer in college basketball is uh, uh, a college that their culture is their catalyst. It's hard to build a culture with kids coming in. You're there for 1 year and they're gone. It's changing the way kids think. If it just doesn't work here, out here, I'll just instead of working really hard, I'll just jump ship and go somewhere else. So I don't think it's a completely. It can't be a finished product. They obviously have to change some things in order to make it more effective than what it is right now because it's not good for kids. They think it is because they're getting paid, but there has to be some change there. And as far as high school goes, when I hear, people and different coaches and what they deal with parents, I don't deal with it. I haven't had to deal with a parent in 15 years negatively. But what I hear what other coaches go through, I don't it's got to make you say it's not worth it. So um, I don't see the longevity that was once there in coaches. And And the other thing is that, how many coaches can withstand the criticism that is 24 hours a day when they're not successful? I don't care who you are, whether you're a kid or a coach. If there are 5,000 posts about what you can't do as a coach every single day on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it is, it's going to beat you down. And at some point, you're just going to say it's not for me.
So for you now, 15 years at Newcastle, that's a long time now in this day and age at high school. How long do you see yourself going?
I don't know. I think it's something that I take a look at every single year. I mean, it's one of those things where this could be it, or I can go another 4 or 5 years. Um, there's a lot of moving parts to consider with that all the time. My professional career has stalled because of this, which I'm fine with. If that's the path I chose. But also, there's family things I have to consider. Um, but for me, I'm blessed that when I make that decision, I'm able to make it because I'm ready to do it based on my circumstances, not because I just it's overwhelmed me to the point where I just got to get out. And that's what a lot of coaches leave, and then they leave the profession bitter. And I've never wanted that for myself.
So as we close, Ralph, is there anything that we've talked about today that you want to repeat to make sure that the coach is listening? I mean, this is all about learning. So
hmm
this is your opportunity to teach us. What's one thing you want to emphasize that we talked about today?
I just think that this just your relationships with your kids and your ability to support them beyond basketball, and um, it's forever gratifying from a personal perspective too. Like if you just coach a kid and they're a commodity to you, and then they move on, I mean that's really no way to do it. I mean, I don't. You're missing out on the best part, and that's the 10-year reunions and the 5-year reunions, and everybody coming back and wanting to come back to tell those same stories 15 times, the same way they once did, and laugh the same way. Don't miss that part, and don't get caught up in the outcomes. Tim and I have talked about that so much. Um, if you focus and spend all your time focusing on your outcome, um, you will not emotionally be able to withstand the pressures of coaching high
Mm.
school basketball.
That's mic drop right there, man. Ralph, thank
Yeah.
you so much. I just want to publicly affirm you, man. I've known you for a long time, and you are my avatar for what a high school coach should look like. The way you treat your kids, the way you strategize, just the way you carry yourself, the way you speak to the position and the purpose of what your platform is as a head coach. And you've been just a friend, a mentor in many ways. And this is just so good to sit down, and just hang out with you for a little bit. So we really appreciate you coming on, man.
Tim, I appreciate you having me, and I've admired you for years because of your philosophy on things, on life, and we thought we would sit down a long time ago. Now I'm 52, and you're 53.
Sort of, yeah.
We finally said, and we kind of limbered down the hill down there, the two of us. Uh, but it's funny, I played with Tim,
All right.
and Tim was a good player, on the playground. I was younger, but that's a long time
A long
ago,
time ago,
but
yeah.
here we are.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. And we're going to be thinking about this for a long time. So thank you again, Coach.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
thanks, guys.
Thanks.